I did not realize how much I struggled with it until recently,
Mm.
honestly.
What changed?
I think I just started to work through the idea of discontentment. Like, I was just realizing that, like, I have a lot. I have a family, I have a husband, I have success, I don't have what people would think is a life where I'm lacking, but I do have a lot of lack internally, mentally, socially, relationally, right? Like I do have a lot of places where there's loss that has created a lot of places where there's discontentment. And so, in me wanting to work through that, I was like Googling things about discontentment, which led me to these things of the relation between discontentment and covetousness. I say, huh, there's a relationship between that. And then I was like, books about covetousness. And then I'm like, Melissa wrote a book about covetousness. I had not a clue. Automatic purchase. So I started reading it, and it was profound to me that this was at the root of so many problems. I started tapping Preston on the shoulder. I'm like, do you realize that if we die to this, we die to so many other
Yeah.
sins?
hmm
Yeah.
So,
I love that it was, discontentment that kind of revealed that. It's actually the discontentment was the symptom. It was the sign. It wasn't the root. But
mm,
that, and even if we go back to Genesis 1, it's like the enemy bred discontentment in Eve first,
mm,
and then we see her desire and take and give and eat and all of the things that she does as a result. But I'd never thought about the fact that the enemy was first sowing those seeds of
yeah.
discontentment.
Mm,
And I would even say back to your question, Melissa, I'm not sure that I don't think it's any more difficult. I mean, if it's the first real sin that we see, or the root of the first sin that we see, then I don't think it's new in this age in any way. And like you said, Jackie, if we have eyes, I think a lot about Psalm 16, and verse 5 says this, and it's been something that I've had to like wrestle down into my heart over the last decade. But it says, David said, "The Lord is my chosen portion and my cup. He holds my lot." Then he says, the lines, so these are boundary lines. And so it would have been talking about the land inheritance, but we're going to extrapolate from that. But the lines have fallen for me in pleasant places. Indeed, I have a beautiful inheritance. And if you know anything about the land of Israel, not all the land allotments were equal. Northern Israel was lush and abundant and fertile, and southern Israel is desert. And yet what he says is, where you've placed me and these lines that you've put in my life, these boundary lines, I'm going to choose contentment in those. And I think about all the boundary lines that the Lord has placed on me. Um, you know, uh, Intellectual capability, physical capability, financial boundary lines, whatever it is, just we're limited, right? In all these ways, spiritual giftedness, boundary lines, all of these things. But this idea of resting within those lines that he has sovereignly drawn has been the thing that makes me just push this idea, just back to your connection, Jackie, between contentment and covetousness, pushing this idea of contentment deeper into my heart.
One thing you said, Jackie, too, like if I look at your life from the outside, I'm like, oh, you're doing it. You've got a great fulfilling career. You've got a great husband who you love. You've got great kids. Well, at least they look great to us. They're so cute.
right.
and for me, actually, what started me on this topic years ago was I realized I had gotten what I wanted. I
Hmm.
had the husband, I had the kids. We finally had moved back from Scott. We had been living overseas, so I was blaming my discontentment on my location.
That's
I was
good.
like, "Oh, it's because it's hard because I live overseas." Well, now I'm back. I'm actually in the state where my family lives, close to people I love, with rootedness. And
Mm,
it was almost like the Lord was like, here you go.
there you go.
Here you go. Here's your life. And I was like, huh, I'm still deeply struggling with feeling discontent each day about a variety of things, and it was almost the exposure of getting the life I thought I wanted that made me realize I needed a desperate heart change, not a circumstance change.
Mm.
Yeah. I love it when Jackie
I
looks like,
know. I know. I know.
It's
Y'all, I did do
highlighted. It's highlighted in my phone. I pulled it up. You probably can't see it because it's blurred out. You want me to read it?
yeah,
I
what
can
is it
read it
called?
verbatim.
read it. Repeat it for us.
She said, "My problem was in accepting the Lord's will for my life, which involved these very trivial items that I grumbled and complained about in my heart. I can say by God's grace, He is changing my heart to trust and rejoice in Him regardless of my circumstances. However, my heart is the thing that needs changing, not my circumstances. If my heart is not freed from this sin pattern, then I will go from initial coveting to more coveting with attainment, gaining me only temporary happiness."
Oof.
Because I do think that covetousness is deceptive, where you do think that if I get the thing, then I will be happy.
Mhm.
When it's like, no, the heart is the issue. It's not circumstantial. It really is. It's you.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's actually why we find so many people at the pinnacle of their career. That's when they crash.
yeah,
Mhm.
Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
you look at people, you're like, why are you doing that now? I mean,
Mhm.
it would just go back to David, right? Like
yeah,
King David. I mean, finally
yeah,
gets the kingdom, finally gets peacefulness, and he
Mhm.
crashes and burns then,
Yeah.
yeah,
and I think it just shows getting what we think we want is emptiness ultimately if we haven't learned to rest in the Lord in plenty or in want. Like
yeah.
that's the thing to attain.
Okay, tie that into Genesis 3. I was going to say Genesis 1. Tie that into Genesis
Genesis 1 is
3.
going really
Yeah,
well,
Genesis
Courtney.
1 is a lot better. Tie that into Genesis 3, what you're saying. Both of you talk about this idea that this thing that became what Eve desired, knowledge of good and evil, she got it, right? And so
Sure did.
what does that show us? The attainment of this thing that we covet and take. Um, how does that really like expound this idea that you're talking about?
Yeah. I think there is something to be said about how God is wise in what He gives us when He gives it to us.
Mhm.
And so it's like Satan is offering you this thing, and you have this perception of it that's not even being defined for you on God's terms.
Mhm.
And so when you get it, you actually get it, and you're like, I can't, like, you get death. You're not
Wow.
getting wisdom. You're not getting goodness. You're not getting life. You're not getting, and so you think if I get the big house, I'll be happy. But then you get the big house, and now you got your taxes are higher.
Right.
Your gas bill is crazy. You understand what I'm saying? You
Got
got
more toilets
neighbors.
to clean.
Yeah, you got neighbors that you didn't have to deal with before. There's all of these things that you did not anticipate you would deal with because you were moving ahead of God's wisdom. And so I
Mhm.
think even our perspective, like the Lord knows what's good for us. And so there's something about covetousness where it's like you think you know better. And
Mhm.
contentment says, I think if I just stay here, He just knows. He just knows.
Mm.
He just knows.
Just knows, like the author of Psalm 73, there is nothing on earth I desire besides you, because what you're saying, like, we get it, these things on earth that we desire, and yet they just don't satisfy because nothing, no one can satisfy except the Lord.
And ultimately, it's a belief in the thing over the belief in God.
Yeah.
It's like I'm putting my trust, I'm putting my hope, I'm putting my expectation
Mm-hmm.
in getting that thing.
Yeah.
And the Lord keeps saying, no. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes He's going to give it to us so we'll see it didn't satisfy.
Yeah.
And sometimes I think He withholds so we can learn to find our satisfaction in Him.
Yeah.
Like I think both lessons are happening in this schoolroom of our day. But to me, Jackie, what you were just saying, it's actually not about circumstances is all. It's about, can I trust the Lord?
I think that's really the fundamental thing.
Well, I was going to go back to what you had said about if you get to this root issue of covetousness, then you are actually addressing a myriad of sins. And yet, I think so often we tend to discount and kind of just think, well, covetousness is not really that big of a deal. Everybody covets something, and we kind of push it down like it's not this big deal. James would certainly have other things to say to us about this idea of, what causes quarrels and fights among you. Is it not this? Your passions are at war within you. You desire and you do not have, so you murder. You covet and cannot obtain, so you fight and quarrel. You do not have because you do not ask, and you ask and you do not receive because you ask wrongly to spend it on your own passions. So obviously coveting is at, like you said, the root. So why do we discount it? Why do we normalize it and accept it? If it is this thing that will do away with so many other sins, how can we give it its proper perspective in our fight against sin?
I'm gonna ask y'all. I don't hear people teach about covetousness.
Hmm.
Truthfully, I have heard about envy. I have heard about jealousy, but I do think when you think about teaching, books, literature, like conferences, a lot of what comes out is like, sexuality, like those, but covetousness, I don't really think we highlight that as a problematic feature of the human nature a lot. Would you say that might be a reason why it's if we don't know that it's a thing, then maybe
Mm.
it's a part of why we're also blind to it within our own selves.
Yep. I think, there's other ones. It's easy to be like, well, that's her problem.
Yeah.
Like we'll talk about sexuality because that's somebody else's problem.
Yeah.
And we'll be real tough on it or whatever, or we'll talk about even things like maybe greed, because I think we can hide behind, I'm not greedy, so I must not be covetousness. I must not, like we picture it just being about money. And so even for my story, I never really wanted, I wouldn't have described myself as greedy.
Hmm.
Right. So I was never chasing money. I mean, like both my husband and I went into ministry. We were not thinking, and I went to be a public school teacher. Yeah. But I think it hides because we limit it. We say, oh, it's just these little things.
Yeah.
And so we think, oh, I'm not about money. But yet it's actually every internal desire in my heart that's messed up. And if we can keep it small rather than expansive, we don't think it's our problem. And you're right, Jack. I don't think people talk about it. And I don't think we want to read about it. I don't think, because we think it's someone else's problem.
And it feels like nasty or embarrassing. That might be a better word.
Mm.
To admit to being covetous feels like covetous, or to
Mhm.
being jealous. Like that package of sin that makes you feel a kind of like you don't want to identify with that one, not that one.
Hmm.
It's very similar to the person who prefers to say that they're angry rather than saying that they're hurt. There's something about identifying with anger that still feels strong rather than saying I'm hurt. So to say that I'm covetous feels a little like, who do you think I am? It feels weak. But
Hmm.
maybe to identify that you're covetous might actually break off some things, because now we're getting to the root of some issues.